خير الخلق قدوتنا تعال وزر وشاركنا وقم بالخير سابقنا لقانا في ابن تيمية وخير الخلق قدوتنا لقانا في ابن تيمية وخير الخلق قدوتنا لقانا في ابن تيمية وخير الخلق قدوتنا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما أمر، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إرغاما لمن جحد وكفر، وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد الخلائق والبشر، صلى الله عليه وعلى أصحابه ما اتصلت عين بنظر وسمعت أذن بخبر. أما بعد. We briefly went over the major headings of the book, which we refer to as the index of the book, the 10 headings or chapters. The first of those chapters was the chapter on ibadat, which is matters pertaining to worship. The ibadat branched off into 5 categories. The first of them was as-salah. It branched off into 7 subcategories. As-salah's subcategories, the first of them was ash-shurut. That branched off, ash-shurut branched off into 6 categories. The first of the 6 categories of shurut, as-salah, is tahara. That branched off into 3 or 4, depending on how you take it from what we mentioned at the end of last week. So the first of those is the performer of the purification. The performer of the purification. أما المتطهر فهو المكلف الخالي عن مانع حسي أو شرعي. This is where we left off last week. Today we will start off, inshallah, with the substance of the tahara used. And after that, the third one is purification itself. And then after that is what we refer to as the nullifier. A student of ilm would follow the outline, every sentence by sentence, and follow along with that. But someone short of that can also follow along with us on the concept and matters that we take pertaining to fiqh, and will benefit from that as well, insha'Allah ta'ala. So the second matter under tahara is the substance used. وأما المتطهر به فالماء الطهور أو التراب عند عدمه أو ضرر في استعماله. He mentioned two substances used for purification, the water and the soil. وأما المتطهر به, the substance used for purification, فالماء الطهور أو التراب عند عدمه. The substance used for purification is water and soil when it's not available, when water is not available. He also added أو ضرر في استعماله, or if using the water will cause harm or injury to that individual. And the author said الماء الطهور, purifying water. And he specified purifying water to distinguish from other types of water and other types of liquid. Because not every type of water is used for purification. And this leads us to the types of water from a fiqh perspective. The first type of water is the tahir غير مطهر, a pure but not purifying water. It's pure in itself, but it can't be used for wudu and ghusl. It's water that had one of its features or qualities changed, which is either the color or taste or smell. One can't make wudu with it. It's like mixing coffee with water. What does that water end up being? Coffee. Tea with water becomes tea. Milk in water is milk. In juice and water, same thing. Water that's combined with another liquid or substance that changes its color, smell, or taste, it's considered pure, but you can't use it for purification. We consume it, so that means it's pure. but it's not suitable for wudu and ghusl. It's like rose water, ma'ul ward. Even though some in the Hanbali opinion adopt that ma'ul ward, rose water, can be used for wudu, but the overall madhab does not adopt that opinion. Why? Because one of its features has changed. The second type of water, from a fiqh perspective, is tahir mutahhir, pure and purifying water. And that's water in its original status and features that hasn't changed. Water that you can use to purify yourself with in wudu and ghusl. And this is what the author referred to when he said al-ma'u tahur. And it's like rainwater. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about it, وَانزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا. We sent down from the heavens purifying water. And he also said, وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ. Like that is seawater. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said regarding seawater, هُوَ الطَّهُورُ مَاءُهُ الْحِلُّ مَيْتَتُهُ. Its water is purifying, as in Sunan al-Tirmidhi. And the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made wudu from Zamzam water. So that means the well water is also pure. This category of water, unlike the first, the features haven't changed. The color, smell, and taste are intact. But some ulama made an exception to that. They said, al-mukhtaliti bi-tahirin yashukku sawnul ma'i an. The exception says, the water may be mixed with something pure that's difficult to be separated from it or avoided from it. And there's even an ijma', a consensus on the purity of the water with such an exception, and that ijma' is narrated by Ibn Rushd and Ibn Qudama and Ibn Taymiyyah. But what do the ulama mean by that exception? You better understand it with an example. Sometimes you got water and you got grass growing within that water, and that grass may change one of the features of the water. Or in this season, the leaves fall in some water and they change some of the features of the water. It's still referred to as water, and those substances are practically unavoidable. So it's still considered pure and purifying according to the ulama. It's like they said, a little bit of najasa that doesn't make the water impure. And the reason we would mention an issue like this is because طلاب العلم must encompass the masail, the matters of fiqh. That's enough reason to study this. Even though you may not apply this in this day and age, you still need to learn it. But this does apply in today's day and age. How? Ulama, like chlorine water, ulama who discussed water that's mixed with chlorine and whether it's pure or not, this is a contemporary matter. They went back to this old fiqh issue to come up with a ruling on water mixed with chlorine. They said chlorine is tahir. Chlorine is used to clean the water. May affect the features of a water somewhat, like leaves and grass does, but in both cases, that is still referred to as water. And the additional substance, leaves, grass, chlorine, is pure. And it's difficult to avoid it or separate it from the water. So they said that water is pure and can be used for wudu and ghusl. Unlike the first category, when the tea mixed with the water, it's no longer referred to as water, it's called tea. Coffee with the water is no longer water, it's called coffee. That's the second type of water. The third type of water is the impure water, al-ma'un najis. And this could be a great amount, and that great amount could mix with impurity. If a great amount of water mixed with impurity, with najasa, and it changed one of the qualities of that water, the color, taste, or smell, then that entire water is impure, najis, and you cannot use it. The same applies when it's a small amount of water. If it's a small amount of water and the impurity changes one of the features or qualities of the water, that entire water becomes najis. Ibn al-Mundhir rahimahullah ta'ala said, scholars unanimously, by consensus, by ijma' agree that if something impure falls into small or great amount of water, and that impurity, the najasa, changes the water's taste or color or smell, then it's najis, it's impure, and it cannot be used for wudu or ghusl. Now there's some issues that are disputed here. What are they? You need to understand the mas'ala first. The mas'ala is when there's a small amount of water, al-ma'ul qalil, and it mixes with najasa, impure water, but it doesn't change the qualities of the water. Does that make it impure? And the ulama here differ on this matter. And they also differ on what constitutes a small amount of water. The Hanafiya said a body of water that's less than 10 by 10 cubits and a hand scope deep is considered a small amount of water, and any amount of najasa that enters that makes that entire water all najis, and you can't use it for wudu or ghusl. Al-Shafi'iyya and Hanabila said a small body of water is qullatayn, which is approximately 227 kilograms of water. So impurity entering to what's qullatayn or less makes the entire water impure. Malikiyya, the third opinion, said there's no specific limit for small or large quantity of water. That's not how we go by. We go by if any of the features of the water change. Each of the opinions has their proof and rationale and rebuttals, and that's taken in a more advanced fiqh class. But the selected opinion, which we refer to in fiqh terms as al-rajih, is the madhab of Malikiyya, and it appears to be what Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala was leaning towards, and it's what his student Ibn al-Qayyim selected, and it's one of two opinions chosen by Imam Ahmad. It's the opinion that water is not considered impure unless its qualities are changed by that impurity, regardless of whether the water is small or great in its amount. And their proof on that is the hadith that's authenticated by Imam Ahmad, that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala an about doing wudu from a well in Medina that's called Bi'r Buda'a. And it's a well where they threw the trash in. In fact, the hadith specifies that they would even throw the flesh of dogs in it. And they asked the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, can we do wudu from that well? And he said, Al-ma'u tahur la yunajjisuhu shay. Water is mere means of purification. Nothing makes it impure. According to the Malikiyya, and what seems to be the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim, and one of the opinions by Imam Ahmad, is that water being great or small has no effect. What matters is if the najasa changes the features or qualities of the water, which is the color, taste, or smell. The next mas'ala fuqaha discuss is the vase used in the wudu. We use faucets now, but it's a matter mentioned under this topic, and like I reiterate, we're talabat ilm, we must encompass the masail that the ulama discussed. The issue of using gold and silver articles for purification, is that permissible? And if someone does use that, is their wudu valid? The majority of the fuqaha, which is the four madhahib, Malikiyya, Shafi'iyya, and Hanafiyya and Hanabila, they say one cannot use a vase of gold or silver for wudu, just like he can't use it for eating and drinking because of the hadith that's in Sahih Bukhari Muslim. لا تلبسوا الحرير ولا الديباج ولا تشربوا في آنية الذهب والفضة ولا تأكلوا في صحافها فإنها لهم في الدنيا. Don't drink in vessels of gold and silver, and don't eat in dishes made of gold and silver, because it's for the disbelievers in this dunya. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam specifically mentioned eating and drinking in gold and silver vessels and plates. But the ulama said That was because it was the majority of the usage of those articles during that time. But it's not limited to only that. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned what was common and popular. However, using them for wudu and other purposes has the same ruling. In fact, Ibn Hajar related that Al-Qurtubi rahimahumullah ta'ala jami'a said that just like the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam deterred from using vessels for eating and drinking, using them for similar means is also prohibited. And that applies today to those who have, for example, faucets of real gold and silver, or they have certain decorations in their houses of gold and silver. Some have even gone to the extent of using gold on their toilets. So it's haram according to the vast majority of the imams in the four madhahib. And we know the rationale behind that. The question now is, someone who used it, is his wudu valid or not? The four madhahib also indicated that he gets sinned for using those articles, the articles of gold and silver, for wudu, but his wudu is also accepted. In fact, An-Nawawi and Ibn Hubayra and others said there was an ijma' consensus that the wudu is accepted. Why? Because from the conditions of wudu is that you need pure water. If your water is not pure, the wudu is invalid. But the vase used in wudu is not a condition of wudu. So that means he gets sinned for violating a separate hadith deterring from that, but that has nothing to do with the validity of the wudu. Now let's go back to the author's statement. وَأَمَّا الْمُتَطَهَّرُ بِهِ, the substance used for purification, فَالْمَاءُ الطَّهُورُ أَوْ التُّرَابُ عِنْدَ عَدَمِهِ. The substance used for purification is water and soil when water is not available. We're finished with water. Now we go to what he said, that we can use soil in the absence of water. Soil can be used, as he said, in the absence of water, أو ضرر في استعماله, or if it will cause one harm and injury. The soil is used in the absence of purifying water, or if water causes harm to that individual. So this is talking about tayammum. And I want to talk a little bit and go over tayammum because it's something widespread and needed. Tayammum is not limited to being stranded in some desert with no water. The author said, أو ضرر في استعماله, meaning for illness or harm. You can resort to tayammum when there's illness and harm. Tayammum is extremely common and widespread, and its teachings are desperately needed. One needs it for himself or his family or for his community and surroundings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you safe and healthy. COVID, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the believers, and the plague and punishment upon the disbelievers, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala occupy them even more with it. It outlined the importance of matters like this. You never know when you will need fiqh matters like this. People began to ask pertaining to tayammum. When COVID first began, they have sinks in their hospital rooms or in their houses, and it's a few feet away. Can they do tayammum? Because the water is there. People were asking what level of illness allows us to do tayammum. What if we don't have soil around us? How do we do tayammum? An amateur in studying ilm would ask, why would we even study matters that are not practical? That's wrong, because tayammum is practical and it's needed. And a faqih, to be insha'Allah, must encompass all fiqh masail. All the various fiqh masail, he must go over them. And let's assume some masail are not needed. This knowledge with the proper intention is a ibadah, so you get ajr for it. But there's many other benefits to it. It opens your mind into understanding how the ulama of the Salaf used to think. And then, an issue you assume or you think is never needed in this day and age may turn out to be a foundation for another totally different contemporary issue when qiyas is used. Just like the example of how an old issue of the leaves and grass growing in the water was used pertaining to a contemporary issue of chlorine in water. So the author said soil can be used in two conditions: the absence of water, or when it will cause someone harm or injury. And let's go over some main issues pertaining to tayammum. Tayammum, first of all, is referred to as the act of dry ritual purification. It's using soil in replacement of the actual ritual of wudu and ghusl. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned it in the Quran. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 6, فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيكُمْ مِنْهُ. When you can't find water, perform tayammum. Perform tayammum with the clean earth by rubbing your face and your hands. That's from the Quran. From the Sunnah, in Sahih Muslim, there's many hadith, but there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim, فُضِّلْنَا عَلَى النَّاسِ بِثَلَاثٍ جُعِلَتْ صُفُوفُنَا كَصُفُوفِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ وَجُعِلَتْ لَنَا الْأَرْضُ كُلُّهَا مَسْجِدًا وَجُعِلَتْ تُرْبَتُهَا لَنَا طَهُورًا إِذَا لَمْ نَجِدِ الْمَاءِ. We've been made to excel over people in three matters, and one of them that pertains to us is that the dust of this earth has been made a purifier for us in cases that we don't have water. There's many other hadith with similar wording and different meanings pertaining to tayammum. And how tayammum was first legislated is actually pretty interesting. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was on a journey with some of his Sahaba and his wife Aisha radiallahu anha. They reached an area called Al-Bayda. And that's when a necklace of Aisha radiallahu anha broke and got lost. And the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba stayed back to look for the necklace. And the area Al-Bayda was an area where there's no water. And they had no water along with them. They were running out of water. So the Sahaba began to blame Abu Bakr. They went to Abu Bakr. They're not going to Aisha. So they, radiallahu anhum ajma'in, they went to Abu Bakr to blame him for the loss of the necklace and the delay. And he in turn admonished Aisha for that, radiallahu anha. The following morning, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam woke up and there was no water. They needed a solution. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse pertaining to tayammum. Then they found the necklace under the camel Aisha was riding on. Usayd ibn al-Hudayr said, ما هي بأول بركتكم يا آل أبي بكر. Usayd said to Abu Bakr, it's not the first blessing of yours, O family of Abu Bakr. It seemed like a delay and a problem, but it ended up with a great blessing, bringing ease to this ummah. How? In establishing tayammum until Yawm al-Qiyamah. You also get from the hadith a side issue that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, which is the permissibility of telling someone, this is from your blessing. Usayd told Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh, it's not your first blessing, O family of Abu Bakr. So if someone does good to you and you say, this is from your blessing in the narrow sense, that terminology is accepted because Usayd told that to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh. There's masail or issues discussed under tayammum. And among them is, what type of illness gives one the right to do tayammum? What level of illness must one have in order to do tayammum? there's three levels of illnesses from a fiqh perspective in this context. Two of them are not disputed, and one of them has a dispute with it. The first one is a level of illness that is extreme. Extreme to where one fears death or the loss of a limb, or that a limb or hand or body part may be severed if he uses water, or that he will lose the functioning ability of any body part if he uses water. He may lose, for example, his eyesight or his hearing or speaking, or the loss of his hand with an infection if he uses water. Matters like that or similar to that, there is ijma' consensus upon the fuqaha that a person can do tayammum. And the proof on that is the verse. وَإِن كُنْتُم مَرْضَى. وَإِن كُنْتُم مَرْضَى specifies an illness. And there's no clear illness worthy of tayammum than this. Then there's additional support which is not really needed, but the ulama mention it. And among that is verses that mention that deter one from harming himself, or verses that mention making difficult matters easy, like وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Another one in Surah Al-Hajj, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. In Surah Al-Nisa, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. And there's a hadith and athar and other rationales that back this matter up, but they're not really needed because it's extremely clear that tayammum is permissible for one who is ill in such a severe illness like this. The second type of illness is a small minor illness where one doesn't fear the loss of a limb or loss of its ability to function if he uses water. It's illness where the usage of water doesn't slow the cure, nor does it make it worse. Example like that would be a simple toothache, a headache, a fever, a slight discomfort from the cold water that will not harm him. This is the opposite of the first, and the ruling is exactly the opposite of the first. It's by ijma', this person cannot do tayammum. Just like in the first, it was ijma' that he can. And the proof is the verse. وَإِن كُنْتُم مَرْضَى. They said people, Allah said you can use tayammum if you're ill. And this person is not really harmed by the water. He's not ill enough to divert from water to tayammum. It's not needed or necessary in his situation. And then they also used a detailed proof pertaining to fever from the hadith that's in Sahih Bukhari Muslim. Al-humma min fayhi jahannam. فَأَبْرِدُوهَا بِالْمَاءِ. فَأَبْرِدُوهَا فِي الْمَاءِ. Fever is from the heat of Jahannam. So cool it with water. What they're trying to say is that the Messenger ﷺ said, use water for fever. So how can you end up not using water by saying, okay, we'll divert to tayammum, when the Messenger ﷺ is saying, use water for fever? They also said tayammum is for necessities, and there is no necessity at this level of illness. What they're basically saying is, Allah permitted one to do tayammum if he's ill, and they said this is not a sufficient illness for one to do tayammum. The third type of illness is in between the two that we already took. And this one is disputed among ulama. This is when one fears water will most likely delay his recovery from an illness or increase the injury or illness. Or it may, for example, cause one's appearance to be defaced, like getting a rash or something of that nature. The ulama are divided into two opinions pertaining to this matter. The first opinion is the opinion of the Hanafiya and Malikiyya, and the correct opinion in the Shafi'i madhab, and one of two opinions in the Hanbali madhab. They said an illness in which water is most likely to cause harm, as in this scenario, it may increase the illness or prolong the recovery. They said this is encompassed in the terms of the verse, وَإِن كُنتُم مَرْضَى. This constitutes one being ill, and he can use tayammum. The second opinion is that one cannot do tayammum in such conditions stated here. According to them, the only tayammum one can do is in the first one, where it's a matter of life and death, where a limb may be severed due to one using water. And this is the opinion, one of the opinions. We said the Shafi'iyya had two opinions. This is one of them, and it's one of two opinions within the Hanbali madhab. Meaning the Hanbali madhab has two opinions on this, and the Shafi'iyya have two opinions on this. They said this illness here is like the previous illness of a headache. And unless one fears the loss of his life or something close to that, or a limb, then he cannot do tayammum. The reason for the dispute is that the scholars dispute what level of fear permits one to do tayammum. And the correct opinion is the permissibility to do tayammum if illness or using water will prolong the illness or make it worse or more painful. The standard is not death or loss of limbs. If it prolongs it or makes it worse, that's sufficient for one to do tayammum. And the verses on that, which are general verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to make things easier and not to harm oneself. هو اجتباكم وما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم ما يريد الله ليجعل عليكم من حرج. It's pretty clear on that. Another mas'ala. If one is in the hospital or in their own house and the bathroom is a few feet away, or the sink is a few feet away, or the water is a few feet away, but the person is unable to reach it due to his health condition and no one's there to help him, is that proper cause for tayammum? He can do tayammum, or she can do tayammum by ijma', consensus of the ulama. And the ijma' has been related in many reference books of fiqh on various madhahib, like Al-Mabsut and Bada'i' al-Sana'a and Al-Bahr al-Ra'iq and Al-Ma'una ala madhab Alim al-Madina and Al-Tahdhib and Al-Furū and other references. The first on that is clear. فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيكُمْ. When you can't find water, perform tayammum. And they said, yes, this person has water a few feet away, but one who can't reach the water due to his health and illness is given the same ruling as one who doesn't have water. From a hukum perspective, it's as if that person doesn't have the water, so he can do tayammum. In Al-Mughni, and which is a reference book on the Hanbali madhab, as we mentioned, and At-Talqeen fil Fiqh al-Maliki, which is a summarized book on the fiqh of Imam Malik, they said in such situation where one can't get up to make wudu when the water is right near him and can't get help to get to the water or bring the water to him, he is like somebody at the edge of a well. And that person at the edge of the well has no buckets or containers to get the water from the well. And he has no way of getting down to get the water. The same applies to one who is unable to walk a few feet to the water near him. They said he's also like one who can't reach water near him due to a dangerous circumstance, like a wild predator or an enemy that might attack him if he goes to the water or the well, or harm may touch him if he goes near the water. They said he is or she is in that same situation and setting. I believe that's clear. Another mas'ala pertaining to tayammum. Who makes the decision pertaining to the level of illness? If there's a Muslim credible, trustworthy doctor who tells that ill person that his illness will increase or there will be a delay in the cure if he uses water, and that's sufficient. He can go by that. But what if there's no medical doctor around or a credible physician to give this type of judgment? Can the ill person judge his own condition by what's most likely and most probable to happen based on his own discretion? Hanafiya, Malikiya, Hanabila, and some Shafi'iyya say yes. The second opinion is by some Shafi'iyya that say no, he can't judge his own condition and his own status. And the first opinion is correct because it coincides with the overall principles of the Sharia that doesn't want someone to cause himself possible harm in such situations. In fact, Abu Yahya Zakaria ibn Muhammad al-Ansari al-Khazraji, who is a very well-known student of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he said it doesn't coincide with the principles of our Sharia that the Sharia came with to deprive one of making such decision for himself. There's some issues on tayammum, but I think we're running out of time. Let's stop over here. And not only because we're running out of time, but let this sink in. Review it. Go over it again and again. And if anything is not clear, let me know, so I can address this before we move on. And that's why we'll move at a slow pace in the beginning, so we can get our minds to adapt to the study of fiqh and how ulama addressed fiqh issues. Then we'll move at a faster level. Otherwise, we really can sit here for an hour and a half or 2 hours. But I don't believe in the beginning stage, when one is still analyzing how fuqaha differed and how they divided it, the first opinion, second opinion, the proofs, and how there could be matters within the same madhab have two opinions on the same matter. So if you review it over and over, and if there's any issues, you need to ask about it, and we'll try our best bi'idhnillah ta'ala to address it. Jazakum Allahu khair, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.